morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we are continuing our look at the complete history of the Pokemon trading card game by having a little bit of a look at the Legendary Collection. A very weird kind of set, not like the other sets we've looked at, and there was a small part of me that considered maybe skipping this set. And then I realised, well, hang on a second. This series is called The Complete History of the Pokemon Trading Card Game. And this was a very interesting set with some weird stuff going on, and I just wouldn't be doing my job if we didn't have a good old chat about it. Though as always, please spam that like button and let me know that this series should carry on to its conclusion. Now, one of the weirdest things about this set is it was never released in Japan. It was a reprint set of existing cards that never actually made its way over to Japan. How strange. And like we mentioned in the previous video, first editions were gone. First edition was no longer a thing here. This was the first set without a first edition, but they've been gone since. First edition never came back. Now, one could argue fairly strongly that this was a sequel to Base Set 2, in that was a reprint set and this was a reprint set, and there was even some reprints in common, but we didn't call it Base Set 3, and that turned out to be an excellent choice. You see, Base Set 2 was not a popular set. It was pretty much a failure as far as things go. This was a very successful set. This went down very well indeed. It was one of the more popular sets at the time. So I think it's fair to say that Pokemon made the correct decision when they didn't call this Base Set 3 and they gave it another name instead. But it was a reprint set. It was a combination of the base set, Jungle, Fossil, and Team Rocket, though it did actually have a single Black Star promo in. There was one promo card that actually made its way from promo into real set, and it was Mewtwo. Not the good Mewtwo, unfortunately. It wasn't the movie promo Mewtwo that was an amazing card that was absolutely brilliant, helped to define the format, all of that good stuff. No, ladies and gentlemen, it was a different Mewtwo. Not a Mewtwo we got terribly excited about. Hey ho, you can't win them all. But according to the lovely folks over at Bulbapedia, a great website that I use for research, you should too, it was actually built for drafting and for sealed tournaments. The packs were actually made with the same types of Pokemon in, so that when you were playing drafted, sealed, etc., it was a lot easier to make a decent deck that made sense. One of the things that's always been weird in the Pokemon TCG is because you've got both typings and evolutions, it can be very, very difficult to make a good deck in a sealed tournament. And Pokemon admitted this themselves, because nowadays when you go to a pre-release, you get a build and battle kit, which gives you basically a starting point for building decks with some complete evolution lines, etc. Well, this was kind of like a precursor to that. Not exactly the same, but not a million miles away. Making sure that even if you had some Stage 2 Pokemon, you could still go and make yourself a nice little deck around it, which was very cool. Now, it was the first set to bring in box toppers. Box topper is generally used to refer to a card you get, a promo card usually, that you get when you buy a box of a particular set. And there were 4 that were available in the Legendary Collection: Charizard, Dark Blastoise, Dark Raichu, and Mewtwo. And these were oversized cards. And reverse holo cards at that. Yeah, speaking of which, we probably need to have a bit of a chat about reverse holo cards. You see, these were brought in Legendary Collection, and we still have them to this day, though they've gone through a few revisions in terms of how they look since. And the point of reverse holo cards are that you can get basically any card in the set as a reverse holo, but it has a hollow pattern. Now, this has a particular point of shame for me, because in my younger days, when my Pokemon TCG knowledge was less obsessive, I saw a bunch of these at a boot sale, and they were not selling for very much. And I went, oh, look at that reverse hollow pattern, they're so clearly fake, and walked on by. It's very weird and unique compared to a lot of the other reverse hollow patterns, but they are very much legit. It is the first reverse hollow. It's kind of in your face reverse hollow. But they were very real, very legit, and it was the first time we saw reverse hollows in the Pokemon TCG. In a pack, you get one reverse hollow that could be any card in the set, with a fun little hollow pattern. And essentially what Wizards were trying to do, because remember they still made the game back then, they were trying to appeal to collectors. Hey, don't you want to buy lots and lots and lots of products to complete the set? Well, how about having to buy so much product that you get a reverse hollow of all 110 cards in the set? Yowza. Oh, and slightly later than usual in these videos, I should tell you, it was released on the 24th of May 2002. But we can't compare it with a Japanese release because, as previously mentioned, there was no Japanese release. Now, we did have a couple of theme decks with the Legendary Collection. We had Turmoil and Lava. Now, Turmoil was a lightning water deck, and there was no holo card in there. Usually speaking, in the theme decks you would get yourself a holo rare. There was no holo rare in here. But there was something a little bit different. It was actually the very first time the theme decks had exclusive cards. Now, it's not like in other games, where they're actually fully exclusive cards you can't get elsewhere. These are non-holo versions of cards that can only otherwise be found as holos. So in Turmoil, we got Dark Raichu, and we also got Dark Blastoise, and these were cards that only appeared as non-holos in the theme decks. If you got them in the set, they had to be a holo. Now for Turmoil, we did get Dark Blastoise and Dark Raichu as a rare. We also got Rare Magneton. Moving on to Lava, this was a Fighting Fire theme deck, and Charizard was featured in here as a rare, and it was the only way to get non-holo Charizard. Though we also did get a rare Pokemon Trader. Yeah, it doesn't really seem fair that one of the theme decks had 3 rare Pokemon, and another one of the theme decks had 1 rare Pokemon and 1 rare trainer. Of course, the rare Pokemon was Charizard, so you know what? We can probably forgive it. Now, in terms of the cards, it was a very weird set because it was a reprint set. So there were no cards that were brought in and transformed the format, but these were reprints after the others had rotated. So like I said, this was a reprint set built around the base set with Jungle, Fossil and Team Rocket, but that came out after that set had rotated out of standard tournament play. And there were a bunch of cards that were, I think it's probably fair to assume, deliberately omitted from the set. They weren't in there because they were a bit good. And because we've been going through the complete history of the game, I'm not going to go into great detail on all of these cards. They've all been talked about fairly extensively in previous videos, so go and check those videos out for a bit more detail. So, cards that were omitted: Professor Oak, Computer Search, and Item Finder. They were at the heart of some of the more ridiculous drawing combos in the game. Professor Oak, discard your hand and draw a bunch of cards. Computer Search, discard 2 cards, search for any card. Item Finder, discard 2 cards and get a card back, like Professor Oak. Yeah, that led to some ridiculous speed. They were all gone, though Bill remained. We lost a lot of the big basic Pokemon. So Hitmonchan, Electabuzz, Cypher, the 3 biggest, baddest basic Pokemon, were all not included in this set. As incidentally was Magmar, who was not quite to the same level of them, but make no mistake, still a very good card. We didn't get Mr. Mime, the one that basically forced you to do a tiny amount of damage. That was kind of fun. And we didn't have, and these were probably the biggest ones left out, Energy Removal and Super Energy Removal. Also Gust of Wind. These were some of the most ridiculous cards we've ever seen in the game, and yes, I do include the modern era. Because you just got rid of all of your opponent's energy while gusting up weak Pokemon and KOing them, it was just a little bit... No. We didn't want that, ladies and gentlemen. It just made the game far too fast and aggressive and really limited the amount of decks you could play. We also didn't have double colourless energy, which did slow down some of these decks that otherwise relied on it. Now, there were a bunch of cards that really made their own decks that were also left out. Blastoise and Chansey were gone. These were very much their own decks, but not after this they weren't. It's interesting that Alakazam and Venusaur did make the cut into the set, but by the same token, they were just not as good. We've talked about them otherwise in this series of videos and talked about why they were very good, but they weren't good enough to really make an impact in this particular metagame. But there were some really good cards that were left in. But they were mostly trainers. In terms of Pokemon, if you dig through deck lists around at the time, the only real relevant Pokemon that was reprinted here that saw a lot of play was Muck. And Muck was a very good Pokemon. Muck was a great Pokemon. It turned off Pokemon powers, and this could be used against a whole bunch of other things. It was good, and for that reason it was included in a bunch of decks since. Now, there were some others that came around. Flareon saw a little bit of play here and there, although did struggle a bit without double colourless energy. And, I mean, the Ghastly was the best Ghastly we had, so Gengar decks that we've talked about quite a bit did tend to use this Ghastly, for what that's worth. But, yeah... The Pokemon lines, there were plenty of good Pokemon in here, but they didn't make an impact on the metagame in the years where this set was out. What we really liked from the set was trainer cards. Pokemon Trader saw quite a lot of play at the time. I mean, Pokemon Trader, and it did make its way into a lot of different decks, trade a basic Pokemon or Evolution card in your hand for a basic Pokemon or Evolution card from your deck. It's Pokemon communication, but, you know, old. That saw a lot of play. Similarly, Pokemon Breeder, that let you put a Stage 2 Evolution card from your hand onto the matching basic Pokemon, that was there. And yes, that also looks familiar. That was Rare Candy. They were both very good. Potion was a half-decent healing card. That made it into a bunch of decks. Scoop Up, letting you pick up a damaged Pokemon. That was a very good card that made it into a bunch of decks. And as mentioned earlier, Bill. Bill made it into the set, and Bill was pretty good. I mean, it was still essentially what we would now call an item card, so that was nice. In terms of decks, there really weren't many decks that were made by this set. Most of what this set gave us was good sealed play and some decent trainer cards. The one I can give you is Steelix with Muck. Steelix with Muck really was a deck that was built because of this set. Now, it's not the only time Muck was used, but Muck tended to be a little tech in other decks. Steelix Muck really was where we were going here. Now, it was a Steelix from Neo Genesis, and it was a tank. Simple as that. Steelix was there to try and make sure that you never actually ended up going down or being lost. You had a giant HP at the time of 110, and you would use Metal Energy here to reduce damage done to you. That was pretty good. And Goldberry to do a little bit of healing. And this all added up very, very quickly. Oh, and Eco Gym to recover and keep your Metal Energy around was pretty gosh darn good. Whenever an attack, Pokemon Power, or Trainer card discards another player's non-colourless energy card from a Pokemon, return it to their hand. Yeah, that was pretty good. That saved it coming around a lot. So you just tanked with Steelix while Muck turned off Poker Pals and slowed your opponent right down. Now, over on Jason Krasinski's blog, I'll link it in the description, it's a great blog, he did suggest playing one copy of Misty's Dugong here, just to give you a chance against fire decks, because there's no point tanking if you're being one-hit KO'd with weakness. Wasn't perfect at all. But remember that Steelix didn't need a particular kind of energy other than metal, but at the time there was no basic metal, so you had to just play special metal. So you would want to play full heal energy to get rid of special conditions, and recycle energy to go back to your hand. But it didn't matter what basic energy you played, you might as well play water so you can use Misty's Dugong. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. The Legendary Collection was a weird set, a strange set, an unusual set, but a very, very fun set that brought some very cool things back. But I'd like to know your memories of this set. Did you buy a bunch? Did you play sealed? What did you think about it? Go nuts in the comment section, but please remember the rules. Be nice, would you? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all this good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but are pretty gosh darned awesome. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.